one's slightly unconventional. So I don't have any formal journalism training. I didn't go to university and do sports journalism. I don't have NCTJ. I don't know shorthand. I went to university to study creative writing. I wanted to be a screenwriter, make movies. And it was through the mentorship program at my university that I ended up doing an internship at a sci-fi magazine. So worked on there, worked for Sci-Fi magazine, worked at FHM, worked at another lads magazine. I worked at a place called Subtitles Times. On there, I met two individuals that go on to create Mundial magazine, and they sort of helped show me not really how to write about football, but show me how to write passionately and how to be curious and how to do research and how to the idea of if you think something's worth 3 tweets, it's probably worth an article, or this is how you pitch. So it showed me more of the soft skills involved in journalism rather than that. And from there, I interned at a number of places, worked at BuzzFeed, worked at a little bit of Vice and The Guardian and whatnot. So my comment was very much 2012, so I'd say 2016. And that was a very interesting time period of the internet. I think I was there for the fall of 3 or 4 publications. So quite a few of the places I interned in no longer exist because we now understand, the internet's changed. And I think, or at least I desperately hope, I was of the last batch that did unpaid internships. My advice to any young person now is, if you can do a tweet thread about it, you can probably turn it into an article. My advice also is never work for free. Or if you are going to work for free, make sure the person you're working for free is yourself. So make sure you are creating your own websites and creating your own Medium pages and whatnot, and make sure you're in charge of your own intellectual property. I would also advise any young person to get in contact with writers they like on Twitter and get in contact with they enjoy, and simply try and build up a rapport. And I would also advise just constantly be curious, read everything you can, read everything. Not just, if you want to be a football journalist, don't just read football stuff. Read stuff about basketball, read stuff about geography. I think one of the really interesting things now is, me personally as a football journalist, I've just learned so much about South America and the history of South America and the history of the Netherlands and the history of Brazil and the history of Germany, because it's so important to understanding who these footballers are and where they come from. And I think if you want to look at someone like Paul Pogba, it's not just important to describe who he is as a midfield player. It's also important to know where he grew up and what that place in France is like and what France was like at the time. And if you can, I think when you want to start out as a young journalist, and I think right now we are in a very saturated market, and there's loads of writers out there that want to write about the top 6 and Champions League and say, this is what is happening on a football field. And I think the best young journalists and the people that really, really excite me are the people that have ideas and have something that they can tell me something that I don't know from watching BT Sport or watching Sky Sports or watching Match of the Day. Someone that can come up to me and go, did you know Mesut Ozil's nickname in school was this? How did you know that? Oh, it's from here. Or someone that can come up to me and go, Kylian Mbappe's goal celebration comes from when he was playing football with his younger brother. How do you know this? And I think anyone listening to this podcast right now, my thing is, so I'm 29 years of age, and you just referred to me as the oldest one on this podcast. And I'm getting to a point now where there are certain parts of the internet I just don't understand. Like, I will never download TikTok. I will never download Snapchat. But footballers use TikTok and Snapchat. So if you are listening to this podcast right now, if I'm 29 years of age and I don't know what TikTok and Snapchat is, what do you think my editor, who is maybe 49 years of age, wants to know about XYZ? Like, if you are 18, 19, 21 right now and you are watching stuff on TikTok from a football player, and then the next time he scores, he does something he did in a TikTok or did in a Snapchat, or if you can see Jadon Sancho at Notting Hill Carnival because Joe Willock put on his Snapchat, and you can write about how those 2 football players know each other and find the school or the coaching academy they used to know each other, and find old photographs and go, this is the story of Joe Willock and Jadon Sancho. You are better at writing about Jadon Sancho than anyone out there going, Jadon Sancho might go to Manchester United for 50 million because according to reports in some German newspaper over here. That's your edge. That's your thing. Find your thing, maximize it to the best of your capability. And that's my advice to every young person.
That's really good advice. Art, I know you know all about TikTok and Snapchat. So Art, how did you get into writing full stop, and then your job at Football.london?
So for me, it was quite a subconscious thing, really. From quite young, I think I had the idea, but I didn't really know until I was leaving school. because kind of a lot of the shows I would watch, so Eight Simple Rules and Everybody Loves Raymond as well, the kind of protagonists were always sports writers. So that might have sparked something in me. And also my grandma actually would make me write out the sports columns and stuff. So I think it was probably already ingrained in there. But
why did she do that?
she used to be an English teacher. So when we would go to her house to kind of improve our spelling and stuff like that, she would read out the article and we'd have to write it out. And yeah.
Did you improve your spelling?
Yeah. So yeah, I think it was always kind of there in my head, and then I kind of just caught onto it as I was about to leave school. So I actually did do a sports journalism degree, started in 2016 and graduated last summer. While I was doing the degree, I managed to kind of clock on to the fact that it's not just the degree that's going to get me the job. So I know Carl said he was hoping he was the last to do kind of unpaid work, but I did quite a bit of unpaid work during uni just to get that experience. Really, I mean, it wasn't just football; it was women's rugby. I would be like one of the women's rugby team's social media and match report guys, and then I'd also keep reporting on our writing about Arsenal, because that was what I was interested in. Did a few work experience placements at Sky Sports, the Independent, Islington Gazette. Just even though it wasn't paid, I knew I was going to get chances to write about stuff I wanted to write about. And then timing was quite lucky for me that last summer, a few months after graduating, the job at Football.London came up, and at first I applied, and then I saw the deadline for the application actually got pushed back, so that got me a bit worried. But luckily, I was able to show myself quite well and get the position. So yes, I've started with them in October, and here we are now.
Do you believe the pathway is opened up now? There's a lot more engagement. There's a lot more willingness to open up the pathway to young black potential reporters.
For me, I generally don't know, and that's just because when I was trying to get my foot into the door, my kind of mindset wasn't, I'm black, am I going to get this position? It was just, I want this position, how am I going to get it? So I can't really speak to is the pathway for black journalists becoming more open. It's just, I think if you have the passion for writing and you have the experience, I feel anyway, you're gonna have the chance to prove yourself no matter what. I think Twitter, you're gonna expose yourself to so many people that you at a certain point you can't be ignored, really. I think when I went for my interview with Football.London, I only had about 700 followers on Twitter, but that didn't matter. I think it's who you expose yourself to that matters most. And it's, I think I probably did have those thoughts of, is my skin color going to affect my chances of getting the role? But after getting the role, those just kind of went away, really. And I think it is just a case of you need to prove yourself to the right people, and they will take a chance on you, really.
Richard, you are the 2016 NCTJ Student Sports Journalist of the Year. Actually, I should be pleased to have you on the show.
Long time ago now.
Listen, a win is a win. What's your route? And talk to us about your journey first. And
So,
what was that helped you to land that award? Because that's a very prestigious award.
thank you. So to be fair, it began, I say, back in school. So I used to play football, so I grew up in QPR's academy. And my thing was, I was always wanted to be in football. So when I left QPR, I was like, okay, how do I stay within football? And sports journalism was always like, was the next best thing, because even when you're playing at games, you see the reporters there, or even the club's media channel or whatever. I was always curious as to what they were doing. So I try to kind of just practice writing. So I do stuff for when I went to sixth form, and do stuff for their paper there. And when I went to university, that's when I really started looking for opportunities. But at that time, so this was around 2011, 2012. I saw that the kind of pathway at that time anyway wasn't there. So I thought, okay, I want to do my own thing. How do I kind of get my foot in the door by doing my own thing and kind of showcasing my skills? So I set up a website called Off the Post News, and that kind of shed light on young academy players coming through the system. Because again, at that time, there's a massive debate about, do we have the talent coming through? And there's always, oh, look at the Spanish, look at the German. And I just thought, hang on, I know that there's talented players coming through academies. Obviously, played against many of them or heard of many of them firsthand. So that's what I wanted to shed light on. So we used to go around to youth games and cover youth matches, and interview young players coming through the system. And as that grew, kind of became almost an authority in that space. So kind of bigger publications would come to me or the guys I used to write with, and kind of ask, who are the ones that we should be looking at, because we had that first-hand info. So from there, that kind of started opening a few more doors for me, I should say. So again, same with the rest of the other boys. I did a lot of unpaid work, so worked for Get West London. It's funny looking back at it now, because obviously come out of uni at these times, didn't have much money, so I was going to games and I was freezing, no coat, just a hoodie, went with gloves, but obviously couldn't type with gloves, so obviously your hands are freezing or whatever. It's kind of those moments you look back on, obviously where we are now, kind of thing. And then obviously again, more doors started opening, so did stuff for the Mail, and then around 2016 I went to the Telegraph. And I was there for just under a year or so. But it was really there where I kind of started to kind of get my teeth into things like from a sports journalism perspective. So they were really good with me in terms of they just gave me like a freedom to kind of, any stories that you could find, just go and prove yourself basically. So it's kind of, they got interviews with like Tyson Fury, for example, or going behind the scenes at Manchester City's academy. And it's that kind of stuff, almost like what Carl was saying in terms of like, not just reporting on so-and-so is going to this club for that amount. Everybody knows that. And obviously getting a great story is really important. But it's kind of getting kind of behind the story and behind kind of, as you say, behind the scenes. So at that time as well, that's when I was doing my NCTJ at News Associates. You say, so she did all the shorthand and media law and all of that stuff as well. So I think, as you say, just kind of based on that kind of fearlessness I had, I think maybe that's lucky enough to get that award at that time. And then
it wasn't luck; you worked hard.
No, thank you. But I think it was just a case of we just had to get your head down, because I think I don't want to say, oh, okay, not many opportunities for black people in sports journalism, but you go to a press box, you look around, especially when I was a young man, as I was then. I only saw Darren at that time, and so you stayed in touch with Darren kind of ever since, because he kind of took me under his wing and was like, hey, you're a young black journalist as well, and you're doing great stuff, and kind of helped me from that perspective. So from then, she did some work in the Metro and again at the Mail and stuff like that. And then I actually moved to Devon at the end of 2016, worked for local papers there. So, like I said, personal circumstances saw me move down. So I worked for Plymouth Live, Devon Live, the newspapers in that area. I wasn't working in sport at this time. I was doing more news, entertainment, food, which was fantastic for me, like going around to like kind of travel, entertainment, stuff like that. And I think doing something different kind of, again, it kind of broadened my horizons in terms of like writing style, and it kind of made me a better writer and reporter, because I wasn't so, don't get me wrong, I still love the game. I still loved like doing any sport I could do, I'd do it. But I think kind of taking myself away from the kind of football arena for a couple of years just kind of gave me that broader perspective.
Now
I think
beyond the athlete.
Yeah.
What was the thinking behind that?
Again, I just wanted to do something that was a bit different to the general podcast where, just banter or whatever. So what we look to do, we look to interview sportsmen and women about their business ventures or transitions from the sporting arena to professional arena or say other business type things. So we've had a variety of guests. So we had Fraser Fanks on recently. We've got Michael Dewberry on this evening, Francis Benali this week as well. So again, it's just trying to get a different perspective to their journey, not just, well, what was it like playing at the Dell, or what was it like playing at Stamford Bridge? What are you doing away from the pitch that's interesting, then that the viewer or the fan can get a different perspective to that person. So that's where I'm at now. Say freelancing and doing lots of digital stuff as well. And just quickly talking about advice for anyone, I think we're living in an age now where the internet is there's opportunities there because of the internet that you can kind of make a name for yourself. You can, as you say, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok. There's so many different ways of YouTube, so many different ways of you telling your story that if you're telling it in an engaging way and with some authority, then yes, you are going to get notice. People are going to take a notice of you. So it's just taking advantage really of the era that we're in and just not taking no for an answer. But I'm quite stubborn in any way. I'm sure as you guys probably see from my Twitter account, whatever. So I'm not going to take no for an answer. And I think that's the main thing that people can take away is that, yeah, you might hear a no, but okay, how else can I get my foot in the door? How else can I, take my opportunity? So that would be my main advice to people.
Did I ask you about advice? Because, I mean, obviously you've been in a short time, but that doesn't mean that you can't give valuable advice to young people who might follow you on Twitter, who might want to follow your path into the industry.
I think mine might run along the same kind of line as Richard's, because if I could just use like an example from my path. I think actually scrap that. I think just the big thing would be to just be resilient, because I think be resilient and just apply for anything, because so coming to the end of my first year at uni, I saw there was a work experience place up at Sky Sports. I applied, they said no, and then I was like, okay, I'll apply next time I see it. Next year, the same kind of ad came up, I applied, and luckily I got it. Think I impressed with my work on the 2 weeks there, that was August 2018. So I managed to get a contact there to see, on my last day there, to see if I could return at some point. Managed to get back in, I think maybe November time, for another week or so. Did the same again, managed to get back in April 2019 for another week or so. And then just to keep showing myself as someone who actually wanted to do this as a career. Then the job actually came up at Sky. I applied for it and didn't get it. So, of course, because I had been quite, because I had been there quite a while, I was hoping that I would get it, but I didn't, and that was fine. I just kind of looked for other stuff to get on with. And I think people may be discouraged by the first no they get, but that shouldn't really mean anything, to be honest, because I think from the space of April last year to September, I maybe went on, I don't even know how many interviews, like quite a few. And the no's were, of course, very discouraging, but you just have to keep going, because in those interviews, you're gonna learn from those interviews anyway. I think the first interview was nowhere near as good as my last one. So even if you don't get the job, there's going to be a learning experience there for you to have to take on to a role that might be even better for you in the future. So, because even with the women's rugby stuff, I had worked for them for 18 months. A permanent role came up with them and I didn't get it. So that was, when that happened, I was just like, oh my God, what am I going to do? But, a few months down the line, and then the job at Football.London comes around and I'm better prepared for that role.